Welcome to UO Today. I'm Barbara Altman, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. Our guest today is Carla Bowers, Coordinator of PathwayOregon, a program of UO's University Teaching and Learning Center. Bowers earned her PhD at the UO in Educational Leadership with a focus on the freshman transition process into college. Prior to starting work with PathwayOregon in July 2008, Carla was an adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Educational Leadership in the College of Education. She served as the Associate Director of the undergraduate program in Educational Leadership from 2003 to 2007. Carla was also a lead researcher with the Educational Policy Improvement Center, whose mission is to improve educational policy and practices in ways that lead to more productive education results for all students, and particularly for students historically underserved by public schools. Carla, welcome to UO Today.
Great, thank you for having me.
I've seen you in advising sessions where I've learned from you, but it's delightful to be able to talk to you here. I wanted to jump right into the heart of the matter and ask you to explain what is PathwayOregon.
Yeah, absolutely. So PathwayOregon is a financial, academic, and personal support program for Oregonian students, so Oregon residents who are eligible for the federal Pell Grant and admitted to the university. So it is not a merit-based program primarily. So we guarantee, or the University of Oregon guarantees, that PathwayOregon students will have their tuition and fees covered without loan money for 12 academic terms or for 4 years. So in addition to that, that's the promise of PathwayOregon. And in PathwayOregon, we talk about the 3 Ps of PathwayOregon. So that's the promise. The promise is that financial guarantee for 12 academic terms. We also talk about the program of PathwayOregon. In addition to having this promise of financial help for students who are lower income, we also have a program of academic and personal support. And so that my primary responsibility is to ensure the success or facilitate the success of all of our PathwayOregon students. And so we coordinate a retention effort around those students, and that takes on a number of different facets, if you will. So one of the things that we do, we have a orientation program here in the summer called Introduction, and all freshmen are encouraged to come to that. But during that time, we put PathwayOregon students into specific advising workshops specifically for them. So we try to give them some additional information about what they need to do when they get here to the U of O, and to explain PathwayOregon in more detail to them. So we get them off on a really good start. So that's one of the things that we do. Related to introduction, what we know about students who are lower income is that some of those really important first steps, such as an orientation program in the summer, are not accessible to students because they can't afford to come, because they're fee-based. So PathwayOregon actually covers the fee if students will come to one of a few particular sessions, and we usually try to make that at the beginning of introduction. So this year, this summer, if they come to one of the first 5 sessions, their housing will be covered while they're here, as well as their meals, so they don't pay. What we found last year is that this encouraged more parent participation as well. So parents came to the parent program. And so we talk about, we have Pathway students who are our primary responsibility and our primary focus. I believe we also have PathwayOregon families, and I'm very interested in supporting families and helping them understand what their students are going to be doing here at the U of O. So that's the program. We have the promise of the money, the program, and then we also have a partnership with these students. We really consider ourselves educational partners. And that means really looking at the student as a whole person. We don't just take on the academic piece, we take on personal issues when necessary. We refer them out for additional support when we feel like that's important. All PathwayOregon students also sign an agreement agreeing to meet certain academic benchmarks along the way, their freshman year, their sophomore year, their junior year, and then into their senior year. And this is to help them understand what they need to do to graduate within those 12 terms of financial support. So those are the 3 Ps, the promise, the program, and the partnership. So that's really what PathwayOregon is in a nutshell.
That was a great description. Thank you. That was a lot of information.
Good.
I wanted to go back to a couple of things you
Sure.
said. This is for students who are eligible for the Pell Grant, which is a federal government grant,
That's
right?
correct, yes.
And you also made a point of saying that it's not merit-based, but I read in the material that you have up on our website that students do need to have a pretty high GPA coming in. These are high achievers.
They are high achievers, and it's their students are qualified to be here. Our 08-09 entering cohort, so the group that's finishing their freshman year right now, they had an average GPA entering of a 3.56. So they need to be admitted to the University of Oregon. So they need to meet regular admission requirements. So once they're admitted and they've gone through the admissions process, and then they're eligible for the federal Pell Grant as determined by their application for federal student aid, their FAFSA. That's when they become a Pathway Oregon student.
You do also, I believe, the program provides financial support to offset the cost of housing for those who are the strongest students?
Yes, that's correct. The strongest students, they need to have a 3.8 GPA or higher to be considered. They also need to demonstrate the most financial need. And so that means being eligible for the maximum amount of the federal Pell Grant. You can be eligible for pieces and parts of the Pell Grant, so it depends on what your need might be. And so those students are thrown into a pool and then looked at for a housing award, and about 30 of those are given out per year. Those students have to meet a higher set of benchmarks in order to keep their housing award in subsequent years. So students who receive the housing award need to maintain a 3.25 cumulative GPA by the end of each year in order to keep that housing award for the next year. For Pathway Oregon students who do not have the housing award, they need to remain in academic good standing, which at the University of Oregon is a 2.0 GPA.
I see. The students I've met so far have been on the Pathway program have been very, very hardworking, really motivated kids. And one of the things that I think is a real cornerstone of the program, tell me if I'm right, is that this aid, as you said, is available for 12 quarters, which makes up 4 regular academic years. And so the idea is really to get them through to the completion of a degree within 4 years of school, right?
Yes, that's right. And so what we really work with students on helping them understand is that although full-time is 12 credits at the University of Oregon, in order to graduate within 4 years, you actually need to take about 15 credit hours per term. You need to be working toward 45 credits per year. That equals 180 credits at the end of 4 years. Most majors, but not all, take 180 credits to graduate. And so we're working with helping students understand what the difference is between I'm a full-time student at 12 credits, but I'm not going to graduate in 4 years if I do that. And so for a lot of reasons, a student might need to take 13 credits one term or 12 credits. We try to help them understand what their options are for, I don't want to say making up those credits, but taking more credits at another point in time. So we have a number of students who are going to go to a community college this summer, which is totally acceptable, and go take a writing class, a math class, a foreign language class, an arts and letters class, such as an English class or philosophy class, things like that, in order to help boost their credits just a little bit. Maybe
to keep them on pace so that they can finish within those 12 quarters. One of the provisions I was interested in is that those 12 quarters can be spaced over 5 years instead of 4. So there is some cushion built in case someone needs to take some time away from school?
That's right. Yeah, we talk to our students all the time. Life doesn't stop just because you're a student. Absolutely not. You have family responsibilities and things like that. And we do have a couple students this term who needed to take a term off for a variety of reasons. One of them had a family member who was ill and she needed to go home and help participate in caring for that person. And it was important for her to do that. And so she's taking a term off right now. She's not losing her Pathway Oregon promise. She's not losing her program access in any way, shape, or form. She can come back in the fall, and she'll have taken one of her 3 terms off that she's allowed to take off. That's excluding summer term. Pathway Oregon students, Pathway Oregon, the financial piece does not operate during the summer. And so students can do whatever they would like in the summer. They can go to community college, they can stay here and take classes, that's fine as well.
They can find a summer job and...
Absolutely.
Right.
And we encourage that as well, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. How did this program come about? You're just finishing the first full year of it, right?
That's right.
So it's a new program. Why did we institute this?
That's a good question, one I like talking about. So our former provost, Linda Brady, was from North Carolina, and the first program of this nature actually was started at the University of North Carolina, where Linda Brady is from. And so while she was here, she's since left, but while she was here, she started asking questions about whether a promise program, that's what they tend to be referred to across the nation as promise programs, if one would be feasible here at the University of Oregon. So she put together a task force, which included people such as Director of Financial Aid and some other people who deal with finances here at the U of O, to see if we could do this. And at various points in time, different people were brought in. What they were seeing at that time is we have a real need, and that lower income Oregonians have a harder time accessing a college experience because of its expense, and we know that college costs are rising. So This program is designed, the promise of the program is designed to address affordability as well as access. And it doesn't mean open access, it means access for students who are really qualified to be here. And the obstacle is their finances. And we don't, and the University of Oregon did not want a public higher education to not be available to those qualified students simply because they were lower income. So it was designed to address affordability. That was the purpose.
And I wanted to emphasize again that this is specifically for Oregon residents. So this is for our homegrown kids from the state of Oregon so that they can have access to the Oregon state system.
That's correct, absolutely.
Got it. Why is it important? I know that access is a major piece of the state system. I'm curious about the kinds of numbers you're facing, though. How many students are being served by it now? By it now,
we had 415 students come in as Pathway Oregon students for the 08-09 academic year, and we already have more than 420 scheduled to come in for the 09-10 academic year. And as we all know, with the fiscal state of our country and our state, we probably have more lower income Oregonians. And so we're going to see probably a little bit of an increase next year. Those numbers haven't totally settled out yet now that we're just into June, but we're looking at more than 420 for next year.
I thought with the economic crisis that there would certainly be an increase in your numbers. One of the things that you seem to aim for in the process that these students have to go to when they're applying for school is not to add a whole other layer of paperwork. In other words, it's a pretty expedited application process, right?
Yes, we didn't want to make this more complicated. That wasn't the point. Students simply need to fill out and complete a University of Oregon admissions application. They need to complete their FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. You can do that online. They need to do those two things, and they need to do them on time, and as long as they meet admission requirements and they're a Pathway Oregon student, it really is that simple. And that's been some of the shock that we've seen with families is, where's the red tape? What else do I have to do? There's nothing else you have to do. This is just an opportunity for your family and for your student, and we don't want it to be any harder than that. So families are pretty excited and actually overwhelmed they feel like they've been given a huge gift and are very, very appreciative.
Where does the money come from to support this program?
So it comes from a variety of sources. First of all, the federal Pell Grant is put toward their tuition and fees. If they have other scholarships or grant money, such as the Oregon Opportunity Grant or something like that, that would go toward their tuition and fees. Pathway Oregon covers the difference, and that has to come out of institutional money. So we are a donor-funded program, long-term. So
shall we say that one more time? This is a donor-funded program.
This is a donor-funded program.
We'll get back to that in a minute.
Yeah, it's a donor-funded program, and we do have a development officer assigned to Pathway Oregon who's been working very hard to sort of get the word out that this program exists, that it's a good opportunity. So we have quite a bit of good video footage of Pathway Oregon students now talking about what this program has given to them and to their family.
After this first year, I would expect you've got a lot of students who are benefiting from it who are really able to explain what it meant to them to have a full year of college here at a reduced cost. I wanted to say that I noticed in recent coverage and in all of the discussions we've had lately about tuition increases for next year, there's always a percentage of the extra revenues that come in from an increase in tuition that's set aside for financial aid. Does that also help fund this particular program, or does that go into other scholarship and grant aid?
So I guess I would have to know more about exactly what that money was to know. The financial piece of Pathway Oregon is actually primarily handled in the financial aid office. So that's one of our offices we work with quite a bit, because we'll get a student in our office, for example, who may have questions about financial aid, doesn't understand what's on their financial aid award letter. We don't have access to those systems, actually. Financial aid, that information is protected. It's associated with their social security numbers, et cetera. So there are very good reasons for that. So we work with financial aid to figure out what their aid packages mean, those kinds of things. And so as far as which pieces come from where, that's a really good question for the Director of Financial Aid.
It was just part of my thinking about how we have a responsibility to continue to provide more financial aid of all sorts, Pathway Oregon included, as tuition inevitably rises.
Well, and what happens when the tuition rises and the federal Pell Grant program doesn't compensate for those tuition increases, students, especially lower income students, are left with more unmet financial need. Pathway Oregon, so the gap that Pathway Oregon is going to have to fill gets bigger because we cover any difference in the amount of grants and scholarships they have in their actual cost of tuition and fees. So that difference is covered by Pathways. So let's say one year maybe the student needed $1,000 Pathway Oregon supplemental grant. The next year maybe they're going to need 3 or 4, depending on what that student needs. And so every student needs something different, and we're really trying to equalize. And so we start with tuition and fees. So there have been a lot of questions around, why don't you cover more, you know, because we're trying to serve as many students as we can. In order to do that, the best equalizer we have is tuition and fees without loan money.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure it's a big concern, though, for anyone running the kind of program that you're at the head of,
Yes.
to know what's happening at the federal level with Pell Grants and other forms of student aid.
Right, right, because we really want to be able to continue this program, and so that's why the donor dollars are going to become ever more important.
Just in case somebody who watches this program wanted to make a donation, and I can't think of a better way to make a gift to the University of Oregon, frankly, how would they find you?
Yeah, how would they find me? So if you go to PathwayOregon.uoregon.edu, you're going to find my contact information there. You can also find, if you just go to the University of Oregon homepage and you type in Pathway Oregon in the search field there, it's going to pull up for you. You could also contact the financial aid office here at the U of O, and they could direct you to the right person in the development office. We have a development officer, and that's who would handle any kinds of donations. It would be a relatively simple process. They're set up to do that now for Pathway Oregon. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So
yes, donor dollars.
Right,
very
we encourage
important.
anyone who is feeling philanthropic. I think it makes a huge difference.
It does.
One of the things that I like best about this program is something that I've seen in action advising Pathway Oregon students last summer. I was doing introduction advising and had a couple of Pathway Oregon students come to me for general university advising. And I think what your program provides for them is something that I would ideally like to provide for all of our undergraduates. Let me make sure I get these benchmarks right. So they have to agree to meet with an advisor each quarter of their first year.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
They have to start taking their gen ed courses. They have to do 4 of them in their first year.
That's correct.
In their second year, they need to start either the math requirement for Bachelor of Science or the language requirement for Bachelor of Arts.
That's right.
And they need to declare a major in their junior year.
Yep,
right?
by the beginning of their junior year.
Okay.
They need to declare a major. They also need to take Writing 121 their freshman year. So the hope is, of course, if we structure it this way for them so that they can't inadvertently fall behind in any one of the areas of requirements, we can actually help keep them on track and get them through in a timely fashion. That's primarily what we do in our office, in the Pathway Oregon office. And so I serve in the role of coordinator, but about a good portion of my time I actually spend advising students one-on-one or doing advising workshops, etc. We also have a professional advisor who comes to us with quite a bit of advising experience in her background, who sees students almost all of the time. And so what we do when a student comes in our office is we have a worksheet that we use that just maps out general education requirements. So it's a condensed version of our degree audit, which shows them their progress to degree, and they can be a little hard for the student to look out and understand what that means. So we break that down into a very simple worksheet, and we fill it in every time that they come into the office. So we say, okay, so you've completed 2 of your arts and letters courses. We talk about, did you have 2 in the same subject? You need to have 2 in the same subject to complete that particular requirement. We go over that every time a student's in the office. So we consider ourselves teachers as well as advisors. We have a teaching advising philosophy, if you will. That's our job. We're doing one-on-one teaching all the time. We want them to understand what their requirements are so that they're not surprised at the end to say, I didn't take Writing 121 and I can't graduate. Well, these students know what they need to take now. They're very aware. And we have about 42% of our students this year self-identify as first-generation college students, which means that they didn't have a parent graduate from a 4-year institution. So some of these students haven't had exposure to college and may not understand the requirements. And so that's our job, to help them understand what those are so that they don't fall behind or feel unwelcome here because it's like, I don't understand. I don't understand. There must be something wrong with me. No, there's nothing wrong with you. It can be confusing. So we consider ourselves teachers. We really want to help students navigate what can be a very complex system.
I was going to ask you what proportion of this year's recipients were first-generation college attenders.
Yep.
I know it can be a really daunting process just because it's really a different culture in a way.
It is a different culture, and you have to go to so many different offices to accomplish tasks. So
Yeah.
we consider ourselves, and this is a term that you might find if you were reading something about first-generation students or lower-income students going to college, we consider ourselves first responders. So our job is whatever student need may come through the door. Maybe it's a roommate issue that they're having in housing, maybe they're having trouble with financial aid, whatever that issue may be, we try to help them sort it out. And if we can't sort it out, then we help them find a person who can and send them, but we send them directly to an office or a person we call in advance so that they don't spend their time getting frustrated going to 15 different places and not getting an answer. That can be so discouraging for a student. That can be an impediment to success. They can just give up. Like there's something wrong with them that they don't understand where they need to go. So we're a first responder office. So they can come in, and I actually have students come and say to me, hey, I have this question, and I know that I can come to you, and I know maybe I should know the answer. And I'll say, no, you shouldn't necessarily know the answer. But they know they can come to us with whatever question they have, and that we'll try to help them.
What a fabulous support system. I wish we could do this for every single one of our undergrads.
I do too.
Maybe we'll get there.
I do too. Advising is actually one of the pieces of retaining a student in the college environment that's most left out. Advising is not always. I think we do a good job here overall for the large institution we have, but it's often left out as it's not thought of as a retention piece. Good advising leads to students wanting to stay. The student doesn't really care how much I know about what they need to do unless they know that I really care about them.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Now, we're in week 10 of spring quarters, so you don't yet have all your numbers in, but do you have any sense of what your retention rate is after this first group this year?
I actually do have a pretty good sense right now. We won't know for sure about our retention to next year till about the 4th week of fall term. That's when they calculate that. But we have retained approximately 97% of our students during the year. So
Wow.
we've lost less than 5% of our students. And a lot of students leave for a variety of reasons, but we still have more than 400 here on campus. So
Congratulations. That's
Thank
a pretty remarkable degree of success.
It is. Yeah, we're pretty excited. And other statistics we have that show early signs of success would be the number of students we're seeing for advising. We track all of that, how many students we've seen. We also have relationships with offices across campus to know how many Pathway students are being seen there. So the primary offices where students are advised as freshmen, we have relationships with those offices to get lists and know our Pathway students we're seeing there. Pathway students do not have to see us. They need to see somebody on campus. So making sure we have ways to track that so that we don't keep saying to a PathwayOregon student, we haven't seen you all term, we've seen in the fall, we know that more than 360 of our PathwayOregon students were seen by somebody on campus. That's very high.
That's very high.
And we may have many, there's about 40 in there that we may not have been able to totally account for, but they may have been advised in their major department. They're still here. We still look at their schedules and see that they're on track. So even when they don't come in, we're monitoring to make sure they're doing certain things. We monitor GPA every term, those kinds of things, so that if we see a problem, we can intervene.
And you can be proactive on it then instead of waiting until the student has somehow fallen off the path to academic success, right?
We talk about proactive advising quite a bit in our office. That's really our approach. So if we have a student and we see that their grades are not in a good place after a term, we have a requirement that students actually come in and meet with us twice during the term. And we don't do that to make their lives harder. We want to make sure that they have access to tutoring resources, that they know what their resources are, that they feel comfortable using them. So that's what we do at our first appointment with those students who might be, having a little bit of a hard time. At our second appointment, we make sure we put together a schedule for the following term that's going to allow them to be successful. A balanced course load is what we're talking about. So not 3 science classes, maybe a science class, an arts and letters class, and something else, so that they have a balanced load. So we're really trying to make sure up front that students who might have fallen off, fallen by the wayside, don't do that. Yeah.
I wanted to get back very quickly to something you mentioned early on as we began to speak. You said that these Promise programs exist elsewhere in the country. How many state university systems run this kind of thing?
So there are 40 to 50 programs across the country, across the country, so a state may have more than one, but they're approximately 40 to 50. They're relatively new. It's not something that's been done for 20 years or anything like that. Oregon State also had one. I'm not sure how that's working for them. I don't know anything about that at this time, but we had 2 here in this state. Pathway Oregon's going strong though. So.
And one question more particularly about your own background and why you might be so invested in this one. I believe you are a Eugene girl, isn't that right?
Yes, that's right. I'm an Oregonian. I was born and raised here in Eugene, Oregon. My family is still here. I graduated from Sheldon High School here in town, and I did a good portion of my graduate work here at the University of Oregon, and I actually was in this state university system for my undergraduate. I actually did my undergraduate work. I got my bachelor's degree at Portland State University. And so eventually came back to the U of O. I'm definitely a duck through and through and a huge supporter of the University of Oregon, as is my family. So,
yeah, we said in the intro that your PhD is from the University of Oregon.
Yes.
Do you find that that connection allows you to connect, make an immediate contact with the students you see?
Yes, I do. I'm able to talk about the things that go on in this state, and they say, oh, I'm from such and such small town on the coast. I say, oh, I've been there, or I've been through there, or, tell me about this restaurant. You must, I can ask those kinds of questions and really relate to where they come from, which really helps them establish a connection, I think, early at the University of Oregon. And what we know about students is one of the primary determinants of retention is somebody on campus caring about a student, and that student knowing that that person cares. So if I'm having a bad day, I have somewhere to go. That's critical to any student's success, any student, not just a Pathway Oregon student, but yeah, and when you can develop those relationships around sharing a state, sharing the culture of a state, I think it's even more powerful. Yeah.
How do you get the word out to Oregon high schools?
It's a good question. So we have a very nice brochure that goes out with admissions recruiters in the fall. And so we had 3,000 of those, and we're down to 200, so that tells you how many went out. Quite a few went out. And so admissions does a really good job of getting the word out about Pathway Oregon. We also had an ad. We've had an ad 2 years in a row in the Register Guard. The most recent ad just came out last Saturday, and it was in a piece on 09 high school graduates, so a little quarter-page ad. And I actually did get a parent who contacted me through that ad, wanted to know more and understand more. So
I think when this interview is broadcast too, it'll help get the word out in yet another way.
Yes, and we're really interested in having students come from other parts of the state. We see a lot of the I-5 corridor, a lot of Salem, a lot of Portland, down to Medford, Ashland, and definitely in Eugene, and getting some students who are from rural communities and the coast and other places who might not think the U of O is an option for them, but when they find out that it can be more affordable and that there's this program and these people here to support them, it becomes more accessible.
Well, I'm really glad to be able to help you get the word out, and
Thank
I wish you well. You look like you love your job.
I do love my job. I do.
It sounds like it's a roaring success after year. Thank you for coming to talk to us, Carla.
Okay, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. We've been speaking with Carla Bowers, coordinator of Pathway Oregon at the University of Oregon. Thanks very much for watching.